Hey guys, so we are back with the Listenator. Yes, I felt an urge to have some effect on the world, so I sort of finished up some things I was playing with before, and I wanted to share them with people in case they might want to use them. Yeah, there's a bit of a question about what this channel is about. Is it about playing with random MIDI things, or is it about a treadmill, or is it about, well, what is it about? I guess I thought about this, and I suppose I'm doing interesting things on a treadmill to make the process of using it more fun and worthwhile for a range of people who are vaguely like me, and I'm sharing the process and the things I make with other people in case they want to do similar things. So I'm using it while on a treadmill, and it's a fun thing, so therefore I am sharing it. So these things are Novation Launch Key Minis. So what they are basically a little programmable MIDI device. I should talk about what MIDI is. So MIDI is this wonderfully general, from my perspective, way of devices communicating with one another to make music. So basically, MIDI consists of streams of events, and then you have things happen when those events occur. So if you have a MIDI keyboard, which this is a MIDI keyboard, or can be a MIDI keyboard, it will send an event every time you press a button, and then something else can choose to make a sound based on that. Or, alternatively, you can have a device and send events to it, and it can make sounds or do stuff in response. So these things are basically like a keyboard. You have different types of MIDI events. So some of them are note events, and then you can have kind of like slider events. So this is a number that you're sending, which you might otherwise do with a knob or a fader. I don't have any faders to show you. Yeah, so that's what MIDI is. And I made this thing using MIDI. It allows me to play music on my treadmill. The motivation for this was because sliding this... Well, firstly, sliding this keyboard in front of the treadmill kind of made me stand back a bit, where I wanted to be a bit close to the screen. It stopped me using a guitar at the same time like this. So I kind of thought, let's see what happens if I use these devices and stand closer. So that was one motivation. Another motivation was I was getting a looper set up to play with guitar. The motivation for that was just to sort of... If you use a looper, you're kind of playing with someone else, which makes it more fun, and more fun means you learn more and you stay on something for longer and get less bored. So that was the motive there. But then I discovered on these devices you could create these keyboards, and then I thought, well, I can use that instead of this keyboard. So then I did that. Another motivation was sort of I was finding piano too interesting, or more too scaly and learny. So I wanted something which was maybe a bit less of that for when I was watching German. So there are various motives for why I played with this. Yeah. Was it worth the time spent? Maybe. It's quite fun. So let's talk through what I have here. So I have Reaper, which is a DAW. And then I have some FX chains that read from these devices and have various effects. And then I have these and I plug them in. On these, I have 4 scales, 4 octaves. You'll notice that these ones are the wrong way up, or the other way up. And then I have a few faders, change effects. Yeah, and that's that. Let me show you some things you can play. So the effects I have are a kind of tremolo effect, which creates this pulsing sound. Which is quite fun. Then I can vary the speed, so you can have like yep, so that's that thing. The nice thing about these variations is that they're multiples of one another. So you can be like, he says, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. So that's quite fun. Then you have this thing here, which just controls kind of how much you mix in the tremolo effect. So you can sort of switch it on and off. And then I have, so I've switched that off now more or less. Then I have a a moving filter, which you might have heard from like an auto wah. Whoa, 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 whoa. And yeah, then I've got this changes the shape of the wave this makes, which you can do fun stuff like it's better with 2 hands, but I'm just showing you with one so I can hold my phone. Yeah, and that's that. Yeah. And I was finding something similar to this, or most of this setup, quite fun for watching and listening to German. Sort of a thing to do in the meantime. And then you play along with the soundtrack and see what key it's in, and you kind of see if you can find similar effects. And I guess one fun thing about playing with this is it makes me more aware of electronic music, in film scores, for example. Yes, maybe I should talk through how it was made a little. So I have these 2 tracks which take input from each device. So if I press that key, you can see that MIDI event going up and down. Then you can see one coming into the other one. And then I apply different effects to each. And I've got this combined thing which applies the common effects. And the common effects, I'm using inbuilt Reaper plugins. I was using, I happened to find plugins which had the effects I wanted with, what are they called? M-Band, I can't remember the name of them. you basically had this free, in inverted commas, plugin library, but the free version happened to come along with a bunch of demo things, and I happened to use the demo ones, and then they stopped working. It's an interesting selling strategy. Let's see if I can find out the name of that company quickly. So I think here we've got all the ones that start with N. Melda. So I was using the Melda plugin bundle accidentally that costs £2,000 or $2,000. So I am not using that. But yeah, what I'm using instead is some built-in Reaper plugins, which seem to work okay. So I've got this sweeping resonance plugin. I accidentally set this thing too high. I think maybe you want it to be a bit more like that. Sorry, you just get to watch me play with some settings. I changed the resonance. That's what was wrong. Yeah, so I've got these two plugins, and then I use this fun open source package by Helge Boss called Relearn, which does, what's it called? MIDI mapping. So you get to map these keys up to control these parameters. It's quite easy to use, although it's very GUI. So let me redefine one of these ones here. So I click the Learn button to learn the source. This was like the tremolo frequency, which was this green slider here. So then I click it, and then that is learnt. And then I click Learn Target, open up the appropriate plugin, and it was a frequency thing I was changing. So then that learns that. He says, oh, yep. And you can see this thing moving as I press it. And then, yeah, that's quite fun. That worked quite well. One thing I did was you can control kind of how the slider position maps to parameter values. That's quite an abstract way of sounding it. Quite an abstract way of explaining it. Yeah, sometimes like how much you move the parameter doesn't line up well with the effect on the sound, so you want to like tweak that. The thing I used here was you just have these min and max values. So I set the max to something low because the higher values weren't very useful to me. Let me push it up high again and you'll see what I mean. Yeah, so I think I just decided it was too slow to be useful. So I put that down to 8. And then it was faster. I had the volume down a bit. So that's basically a 70 hertz tremolo effect, which is a note in itself, so you can't really hear it very well. Yeah, so it was too fast to be useful for what I wanted, so I put that down to 8. So that was one fun thing I did. And then for some other controls, I use other settings, other features. So I think one thing I did something interesting for was this sweeping resonant low pass filter sweep time. Ooh, this is a bug in relearn. So what I did here is I set some value sequences. I set a value sequence. So that we didn't go through the range of values in a linear way. So rather we've got like this logarithmic path through it. So what I wrote in for these values was like 1, 2, 4, 8, whatever. Yeah, so that was another thing I did to get a nice effect there. And I guess the only other interesting thing here was I wanted to be able to switch this effect, the auto wire effect, on and off without having another button to press. So what I wanted was when I maxed out the period of the auto wire, it switches off. And the way I achieved that was I had 2 mappings, you can see here, which have the same source. So both of these are CC channel 13, CC number 24, which I just got by doing the learn majig. And then I have this one basically switch off the effect or bypass it. And I use some magic here with these value settings. So I like have this is on, then off. One nice thing about relearn is you can watch the effects of the values as you click. So you see that blue slider? So I'm clicking through the various controls here. And you can see it go on, off. Yes, that was a fun thing I could do. And that is that. So if you wanted to achieve the same results as me, you could maybe do something similar. I don't know how much I recommend Reaper. It gives you control, but I think it's kind of a programmer's tool. Maybe normal people or people without a nerdy background, programming or maths or science, should use something more standard like Ableton or whatever, and then when they find the limits, switch over to Reaper. One weird thing with this Novation stuff is, or one feature is when you move this slider, you can click on the button at the end repeatedly to kind of go between the values. I guess it's the only way they can do it. And maybe it's better than sort of if you had one of these knobs, you want to kind of use very fine motor skills to get intermediate values, and maybe this is nicer. One thing I wanted quite a lot, or I want quite a lot and may implement at some stage, amongst the other infinite number of things you could do in one's limited life, is I kind of wanted the whole board just to consist of these buttons. You could click through like 5 settings. How many do these have? Let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4. Sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, they've only got 4 settings. But that's enough for a bunch of things. I might want more in practice. But then that way, instead of here, you see where I have these 4 sliders taking up 32 squares. I could instead have 32 different controllers, all of which I could press with one thing. I don't think anything exists for that yet. I think it is implementable. But then, see here, I'm using an entire keyboard basically just to get these 16 things, and they have no display of where they're at. Whereas here, I could have something taking up a similar space, and then giving me 128 parameters to control, which would be quite cool. Maybe I can make it and sell it to justify my time. I think it still doesn't justify my time unless lots of people buy it, and not many people would. A nice thing about these Novation pads is I think they're infinitely controllable. They have built-in only 3 screens, but if you have software on the other end, you can control completely the colors, all the colors. So you can just send lighting events. And if I wanted to, I could write something which basically let me remap everything and set values. I guess I might need to create fake MIDI events, which I have seen done before. Yeah, so that's that. I'm talking through the implementation, so I'll show you one other thing, which is the software that Novation provide to control these layouts. So there's a thing called components. They've got a website version as well. I was having some bugs with that with one of the pads. It worked perfectly first time, but then when I started plugging into, I got issues. Another issue was when you want to map these, I need to unplug one of them. So this app has randomly, or maybe pseudo-randomly, deterministically randomly, in a way I do not understand, chosen one of these devices. But yeah. What this then lets you do is... Don't want to send anything. I just want to open something, create custom mode. So this is a representation of a pad on the screen where I can map keys. So I can go along and pull a chromatic keyboard here, set its colors. Ooh, how odd. Yeah, so I can set its colors, and then I can set drum grids or individual MIDI notes and individual MIDI buttons or sliders like this. So that's how I built this thing. And I have a few saved. I might at some point in the future share my settings if you want to copy me with less work. I think these things are designed for Ableton, so you might prefer just to use Ableton. Yeah, so I made a few of these. That was easy enough. It's a bit of a pain changing all the colours. That's one thing I would say. Another annoyance I have is these keys could be used for something else. So I might at some future point go and like draw this thing with notes, and then I can fill in the gaps. A thing I noted before when I was trying to play on the go with these things is you actually tend to want, I'm going to say 3 octaves, but maybe you want more. But 2 octaves is not enough, I can say that. Because you sort of want 200 chords, and you want to be able to, if you're playing a melody, you want to start at any key and then kind of go up an octave or down an octave. And 2 is not enough. This thing here, I've put 2 octaves on the thing. And in theory, I have 4 when I'm playing with 2 hands. I may in the future learn to like do that. So I'm sort of very C, E. So I'm playing around C when I play this. Mostly doing stuff in C minor today. Like in theory, you can do this. But that's a limitation, maybe. I might glue these together, well, not glue, tape these together at some stage to do that. So that's one limitation. I spent a while before playing with trying to have this control here at the top transpose, that would go up an octave or whatever. That didn't work very well with the plugins I could find for obscure reasons. That was one limitation. But yeah, that's talking through that. I hope that's interesting. Another thing I want to talk about is how you might use this. So I'm using this at my house on this treadmill. Just plugged in as something to do. This thing is small enough that you could take it to a gym. This is kind of a standardish gym layout, and most gyms will have this flat surface, so you can actually put a laptop and a couple of pads on and some headphones, and then that could give you something to do. So in theory, this is applicable to lots of places, or if you're traveling or if you're moving around. Whereas this might be less applicable. And that also less applicable. Yeah. Another thing I'm working on, which is the reason I started all of this, is these looper controls, which is very nearly there. So if I show you on Reaper, this is a non-standard way of doing a looper because I couldn't find one. I'll show you because it's quite fun. So what I have here is I have 8 delay pedals, or virtual delay pedals, which are in parallel. So I take an input and then I split that input out into 8 signals, and then I go through these controls, and these have different loop rates or different loop periods. So let me unmute this one. This is where the bug is. Ooh. So I want that to be... Oh no, that is unmuted. Wait, I haven't quite set up these mappings here. Oh, and I've got these and start things wrong. I think that was at 0 before the saturation. I've been playing with them a bit. And the mix was at 100. I think all of these things need to be... This was just me playing for fun before. Ooh, let me look at another one and copy the settings across. I want this to be off. And I want this to be not a tempo sync. I want these to be linked. Yeah, there we go. Yeah. So here what I have is a 2-second loop. I'm just setting it to precisely 2 seconds. So you'll see what I kind of did there is I played and then it had a natural loop rate, so then I started playing along with myself to get the frequency, and then I press this button which freezes, and then I have that loop repeating on a freeze, and then I can play along with it. And then the idea is I can go and, for example, this thing is going to have double the period of time, and then I can have a longer accompaniment going with that. And then I'll be able to, using these buttons, switch everything on and off. And then these buttons, I'll be able to clear stuff. And then I'll be able to use that with a guitar and a piano and whatever. So that is very nearly there. The only issue is I need to fix. I want this button here to both control this mute control and this volume control, input and output. Because if I was just pressing this button here, it was pausing the effect, which was not the thing I wanted. So it's just a tiny bit more work to get that done, but more than I wanted to do now for showing you. Yeah, so that's almost there, and that'll be very cool. I was playing with it a bit earlier, and I need to do a bit more work on my pedal chain, effects chain, virtual effects chain for a bass, because I had noise and stuff. So I just need to get some things, map these buttons, and maybe do some labels. That's another time. So yeah, that's me finished with muttering about MIDI. Hope that was fun. Bye.